What if I told you some of the most horrifying moments in your favorite horror movies actually happened? We often watch horror films from the safety of our couch, thinking the terror is just make-believe. But what if the blood-curdling screams, the shadowy figures in the night, and the unspeakable evil lurking behind closed doors weren't just fiction? What if they were inspired by real events? Ones that shook communities, haunted families, and left unsolved mysteries that still send chills down spines to this day? From the chilling case that inspired The Conjuring, to the twisted crimes behind the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and even a murder mystery that birthed Scream, these real-life horrors are far scarier than any script. Let's dive into the terrifying true stories that Hollywood barely needed to exaggerate. 1. The Conjuring. Before it became a blockbuster hit, The Conjuring was rooted in the nightmare of the Perron family. In the 1970s, Roger and Carolyn Perron moved into an old farmhouse in Harrisville, Rhode Island, with their 5 daughters. Almost immediately, the family noticed strange occurrences, the objects moving, doors slamming on their own, and a rotting stench with no source. But it got worse. Carolyn claimed to be attacked by an unseen force. The family eventually sought help from famed paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. According to the Warrens, the spirit of Bathsheba Sherman, a woman believed to have practiced witchcraft in the 1800s, was haunting the home. While skeptics questioned the story, the Perrons stood by their chilling accounts, and Hollywood did the rest. 2. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre Leatherface, the chainsaw-wielding maniac in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, wasn't entirely fictional. He was heavily inspired by Ed Gein, a real-life murderer and grave robber from 1950s Wisconsin. When police raided Gein's farmhouse in 1957, they found a house of horrors. Human skulls turned into bowls, furniture made from bones and skin, and a suit crafted entirely from human flesh. Gein only confessed to 2 murders, but the grotesque items found in his home told a far darker story. His twisted obsession with his deceased mother, combined with his macabre craftsmanship, inspired not only Texas Chainsaw, but also Psycho and The Silence of the Lambs. Now, what if I told you that the next story involves a teenage killer, whose brutal spree would end up inspiring a slasher movie franchise? 3rd Scream. In 1990, Gainesville, Florida was gripped by terror. Over the span of just a few days, 5 college students were brutally murdered by a man named Danny Rolling. He broke into apartments, mutilated his victims, and left the town in a panic. Rolling later confessed to the killings and was dubbed the Gainesville Ripper. His crimes directly inspired screenwriter Kevin Williamson to create Scream, a film that brought the horror genre back to life in the 90s. Ghostface may be fictional, but the fear he stirred echoed the very real panic Rolling inflicted on Gainesville. Quick pause. If you're into creepy real-life stories that inspired your favorite horror films, we've got plenty more coming up, so make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chilling upload. And hey, which of these stories has freaked you out the most so far? Drop it in the comments. We read everyone. The Exorcism of Emily Rose. You might remember the disturbing possession scenes from The Exorcism of Emily Rose, but they're based on the tragic true story of Anneliese Michel. In the 1970s in Germany, Anneliese, a devout Catholic, began experiencing seizures and hallucinations. Diagnosed with epilepsy, her condition worsened, and she and her family became convinced she was possessed. Over 10 months, 2 priests performed 67 exorcisms. Anneliese eventually died of malnutrition and dehydration. Her parents and the priests were charged with negligent homicide. Medical experts called it a case of untreated mental illness. The church believed something darker had taken hold. Either way, the horror was heartbreakingly real. 5. The Amityville Horror. In 1974, Ronald DeFeo Jr. murdered 6 members of his family in their Amityville, New York home. A year later, the Lutz family moved in and only lasted 28 days. They claimed to experience terrifying paranormal activity. Strange odors, slime oozing from walls, demonic faces, and voices whispering to leave. Their story became The Amityville Horror, a book and later a film franchise. Though many details were disputed, the murders were real. The question remains, were the Lutzes truly haunted, or was it all a hoax? The house still stands today, forever linked to death and mystery. When fiction becomes a mirror. The scariest thing about these horror films isn't the jump scares, blood splatters, or demonic growls echoing through the speakers. It's not the masked killers or the flickering lights. The true terror lies in the knowledge that behind those twisted plots, behind the screams and shadows, there's often a very real story. A person, a family, a town that actually endured the darkness. Because when horror imitates reality, it hits us on an entirely different level. It's no longer about suspending disbelief, it's about asking the most uncomfortable question of all. Could this happen to me? Horror at its essence doesn't just aim to frighten, it reveals. It pulls back the curtain on the parts of human nature we'd rather not face. Grief, guilt, isolation, madness, and violence. When these films are based on true events, they stop being cautionary tales or ghost stories. They become mirrors. Mirrors showing us that monsters don't always come with claws or crawl out from under the bed. Sometimes they look like your next-door neighbor, a trusted friend, a parent, or even yourself. Consider Ed Gein, a quiet man from rural Wisconsin who, to outsiders, was just a reclusive farmer. No one imagined the horrors hiding in his home, or in his mind. Or Annalise Michel, a young woman whose cries for help were interpreted through the lens of faith instead of medicine, leading to an ending more tragic than any possession movie ever dared show. These stories don't just scare us. They haunt us because they echo something that lives deep within the human psyche. The fear that reality doesn't need the supernatural to be utterly terrifying. And once you realize that, you start to see horror in a whole new light. The slasher, the demon, the haunted house. They're all metaphors, stand-ins for deeper truths. What's really frightening isn't what goes bump in the night, but what people are capable of in broad daylight. So, why do we keep watching these films? Why do we sit through stories that make our skin crawl, that leave us sleeping with the lights on? Maybe it's because horror gives us a controlled space to confront chaos, to test our limits from a distance. We can witness the worst of humanity, or the most inexplicable of phenomena, and then walk away when the credits roll. It's our way of dancing with the dark without being consumed by it, or maybe it's something deeper. Maybe we're drawn to real-life horror because it gives us a glimpse into the extraordinary moments that shattered normal lives. It shows us that anyone, a college student, a small-town family, a grieving daughter, could find themselves in the middle of something terrifying. And in doing so, it connects us. Each of the films we've explored today doesn't just aim for screams. They make us feel. They make us think. They challenge what we believe about the world and about ourselves. Because behind every camera angle and chilling score, there's a story rooted in reality. A truth more terrifying than any monster Hollywood could conjure up. And perhaps that's the real magic of horror. It strips away the illusion of safety and asks us to look into the abyss. And in that darkness, we sometimes see our reflection staring right back. If you made it this far, then clearly you're as fascinated by the blurred line between true crime and horror as we are. So here's your next move. Hit that like button to support the channel. Drop a comment with the real-life horror story you think should be turned into a movie. And don't forget to subscribe for more spine-tingling content just like this, because trust us, we've only scratched the surface of what's lurking in the shadows.